and I never thought that, you know, my living would be music. When you go back 10, 15 years and I was earning very little, but I was still, music was my life. So nothing had changed. I just was on another level, you know what I mean? And sometimes, you know, when I did some lick parties, I mean, I think, to be honest, when we did a lick party in... the lick parties we did abroad were sometimes bigger than the lick parties we did in the UK. I remember doing a lick party in, I think it was Sweden or Denmark, and there were like 4,000 people there, 5,000 people there, and it was insane. Walked on stage, it was insane, the way people went mad, and it was like I was some sort of rock star. I was like, this is now going a bit crazy, you know, it's going a bit crazy, but yeah.
I just want to get into some, you know, hip-hop questions now. You know, I'm a big fan of, you know, I don't want to say this like old school hip-hop. I'll say this, I like boom bap hip-hop with feeling and soul and a bit of jazz in there and, you know, good wordplay and even a message sometimes. I like that a lot. And I'm a big fan of Gangsta, Guru and DJ Premier. You know, rest in peace to Guru. I just want to ask a few questions on that. As a big fan of Guru, I know you started working with him in the early days at Cool Tempo, EMI. At the time, just give me like your, you know, your top 3 Guru tracks and, you know, your top 3, the defining Guru tracks.
You're talking to a man who's got like 20,000 records and who doesn't live, you know, oh my God. It's tough because if you're into lyrical wordplay, I'm a more of a beats man and a hooks man, but I'd start with Words I Manifest was one of my earliest encounters with Gangsta. I think they were on a label called Wild Pitch then. And I heard the jazz sample and I was like, this is sick. And I used to play it a lot at hip-hop raves I did in the late 80s and early 90s. That's one, oh God. You know, Full Clips, these. I mean, there's loads. I don't want to. I think his Jazzmatazz stuff was really interesting, but it was more theatrical and more like a soundtrack. So, God, what's the other one? Code. What's the album?
Jesus. Code of the Streets.
Yeah, Code of the Streets. I mean, there's so many. How can you do this to me, man? God, you have to remind me because you know my Steve was. You know, I always, as an A&R man, we always looked for singles. We never managed to sell singles with Gangsta in the UK much. I mean, you know, Jazz Thing, for example, which was a soundtrack, did okay. You know, My Steve's was a very strange production. You know, it's typical Primo. He went heavy on the B-line with that. It was like almost distorted B-line. I don't know. You have to remind me of something.
Moment of Truth.
Yeah. Well, see that if you talk to anyone about hip hop, you have to talk to a real hip hop fan about knowing those tunes, because most of them don't know those tunes. You know.
That's what I was kind of thinking, because he passed away recently, and to me, like, you know, you've got Tupac, Biggie Smalls, legends that people remember. Yeah, that kind of hurt me.
Well, you know, let me tell you about Guru. Guru was a top guy. He was very, very anglicised, you know. He when he'd come here, we'd go round, we'd go clubbing, he'd want to hang out. You know, we went places and sat down and we'd talk tunes. He was a very, very deep guy, you know. Like, I really liked the guy, you know. And he loved jazz. He loved real, authentic R&B and jazz. He was a Renaissance man in that way, you know. And he wanted to collaborate. I mean, you know, you have to understand, on his album, the one I A&R'd, partly A&R'd, not the first one, the second one, we had Jamiroquai and people like that, you know, and we tried to team him up with Shaka Khan, and it was amazing. You know, I wouldn't say, I think we got to the point on that album where it was slightly style over substance, and you know, that's what happens with those albums. But 2 good albums, 2 good projects, but that wasn't what he was about. It was about him and Primo, and that to me was the essence of hip-hop. You have an MC and a producer who's also your DJ, but is a real producer, not just a DJ. He turns up, he produces the tracks. Primo was awesome. They were a great marriage. I think the problem with Guru, and the way people see him with his legacy, he's quite a monotone rapper. He's quite one tone. He's quite one thing, and he didn't get into gangster rap too much. He didn't get into, you know, and that style he had was hot for, say, 4 years, late 80s, early 90s, and then it kind of changed, you know, when the West Coast got involved and the sound changed and gangster rap got bigger and bigger, they became a bit marginalised, and that was the problem. But he's a great guy.
Would you consider making Guru Ledge of the Week for your One Extra show in the weekdays?
We've made Gangster Ledge of the Week, I believe. I don't think we made Guru separately. I don't think it's right to separate them. You know, it's Ledge of the Week. You know, it's just I've got to find an artist every single week. So some of them are ledges, and some of them are just like people who made it. I mean, Sierra was one, for God's sake. You know what I mean? So just someone who's put out a lot of tunes and made a contribution. But you know, you talked about you being a massive fan of Gangster. If you're a massive fan of Gangster, you have to be a massive fan of A Tribe Called Quest, because they're my favourites of all time. You know, they're my favourite hip hop group ever. They had it all. You know, and I think Guru would have benefited a lot from from word playing with another MC. I think that would have given him more longevity at the top. I think his problem was that it was just him and Primo, and if you had one album, you kind of had them all. You know what I mean? You didn't expect much change. Whereas with Tribe, they lasted a bit longer. They made at least 3 really classic albums, and that was purely because Fife had Q-Tip to bounce off, and you know.
You grew up in Hackney. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a big event going on in Hackney. I just want to know what it's going to mean to you when you step out, you know, on that stage, you know, whatever capacity you're going to be involved in, hosting, DJing at the One Extra Radio One weekend. Tell me how that's going to feel. What's that going to mean to you?
Well, it's really emotional for me, even thinking about it again. I don't think we're going to do much stepping out on stages. I think we're going to be doing a lot of camera things that are going to be projected. I think it's going to be dealt with a little differently. But to be honest, when they mentioned it, there's a legend in this building that there was a tear in my eye when they told me. You know, it's massive for me. It's like they asked me to be an ambassador. I'm an ambassador for the event. There are 4 of us. I helped choose the other 3 ambassadors. I thought that they were representative sort of the area in terms of different styles. Leona Lewis, Philip Sado, Plan B, and myself. It's going to be, it's going to be very emotional for me. It's a full circle. You know, I built my sound system from nothing. It wasn't a great sound system, but it was our sound system. And that was a quarter of a century before this event. And then this event happened in the same era I grew up, I was born half a mile away from where it was going to be. I've lived 30 years of my life in and around that area. I watched my dad play football on the marshes. The Olympic Stadium is just behind, in sight, what has been a waste ground for me for all my life, looking at it thinking no one cares about Hackney. And I think it's amazing. I think it's going to be a memory for everyone who goes there.
What do you think makes a good DJ?
It depends it really depends what music you play. If you play dance music, you've got to be a great mixer, and you just got to have energy and do what you got to do for house music. Their way of DJing is very different to my way of DJing. I was always known as a selector. Always, even when I was 18, I was, you know, we had 3 of us DJing in my sound system equally. The crowd wanted me on all night, and I ended up DJing literally the whole night, most parties, like 5 hours, just because I could read a crowd, select, you know. I was never a scratcher mixer type DJ. It was never what appealed to me. I never wanted to do that. It was never me. I just wanted to find music and play it. As I became more successful, you know, you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to bang it out in a club. But I still think there are 3 main things: personality, technique. You have to be basic. You have to be able to do something. No matter what it is you do, you have to do it well. If you're a chatter on the mic, you have to know when to do it. You have to know how to drop things. You know, Wes was a chatter. He will scream and shout down the mic. Dave Rodigan will chat, you know.